This episode of Bend the Knee is brought to you by our bannermen, Lord Jason of House Ross, Lady Amanda of House Richardson, Lord Adam the Young Bull of House Parker, Sir Peter of House Whittingham, Sandy the Dragon, Blood of Queen Daenerys, and Lady of Jameson, Lord Nelson of the Long Isle, Sir Joshua of House Ross, Lady Liz of House Hendricks, Sir Matthew of House Perry.
This podcast is protected by Lord Hunter the Foul-Mouthed, Lady Amanda of House Ryan, Lady Rajal of House Stevens, Sir Ron of House Golson, Lord Robert the Unfrozen of House Butler, Lord Paramount of Skagos Island. Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Ser Ezra, the Watchful. Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Today we're into Jon I of Clash of Kings.
Yes, back from our holiday break there. It's a new year, 2020, our first podcast of the year. How you doing, Ser Ezra?
Dude, I'm awesome. This is awesome. I mean, it was nice to be on break and have be refreshed and relaxed and everything. But it's good to be in a new year and to let the woes of 2019 just go. Let it all go. Let the past die. Okay, just and move forward. So I'm excited. Got a lot of cool things. Actually, even pre-recording, like I'm making some absolute gains, getting ready for the year, and just stoked. So major changes. I have to go back to work tomorrow. Slam on me. So that'll be fun.
Hey, that's okay. Hey, yeah, man, it not only is it a new year, it is a new decade. Ser Ezra and I have a lot of things cooking. Just a lot of updates to kind of our shows across the board, as well as a new show. I know many people have already been checking that out, whereas and I cover Wheel of Time. You can check that out. It's Heroes of the Horn. But here on Bend the Knee, we have a couple Patreon updates we think is going to make everything a lot better.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about them because it's something we actually kind of discovered through doing Heroes of the Horn. And I was like, man, this just works 10 times better. And it actually, I think, makes more sense and will be better for listeners. So go check out the new reward tiers there and kind of see how we're releasing episodes. You're getting more, essentially. I think that's kind of hard to believe. But
a lot more, yeah.
Hard to believe, because sometimes I feel like we did we had, at one point we had 3 extra episodes going up. And then we had a little bit of a downtime around the holidays, but then it was nuts. We had a schedule and everything, and now you're getting more than what we gave you before. So it's gonna be cool. It's really, can I tell them about it? Just tell them what the
absolutely.
Yeah. So on the holidays there over during Christmas we did a nice sort of green dream. We took a character at the end of A Dance of Dragons or whether it be Feast of Crow, whatever, and we moved that character forward, and we try to think about what's going to happen. We discuss what has happened in the series, and then based on what has happened and what we know, where do we think that character is going to go moving forward? We're kind of premonitions, if you will, about the future, and that I thought was pretty neat, and it's a pretty easy format for Green Dreams. We can kind of look at stuff in Season 8, and we've been wanting to do more of that, so once a month we're going to keep doing the Green Dream, and we just moved that up a tier, and move that up to our $10 tier. But at our $5 tier, we're doing what's called the Extended Edition, and it is a weekly podcast. So, it just makes sense. We always, almost always, when we're done recording and the mics are still hot, there's a lot of times where I will sign off and we talk for an extra 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. It just depends.
Sometimes an hour.
Yeah, and yeah. I'm like, what in the world? Why are we stopping?
Why aren't we not recording that? Exactly.
We're wasting a good conversation, and so really it's like we're extending the discussion in the chapter, and we kind of caught ourselves doing that a lot. We know that we do it here with Game of Thrones, but we really did a lot of that in Wheel of Time, and it was just natural. And so we thought, man, we do that anyways. What could we, kind of how could we turn that into something extra and give that to you guys just for supporting us, because your support is huge and we really do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
But it's like so if a rabbit hole comes up, oftentimes, I remember the first season of this show, a rabbit hole would come up and we would say, well, we'll get back to that later. And I had a list of rabbit holes that we just couldn't get back down because we had to just keep plugging along with the chapter and stuff. So really when I say it's an extended edition, it's sort of like as those things come up, we table it and then we will follow up with it directly after the show. If it needs a little bit more research, then maybe we can kind of put that on a list and look at that later. But for the most part, a lot of times we're able to just dive right back into it and go do the research on the fly, real informal, and just extend the chapter. So that's a lot. That's weekly, so you have 4 of those a month right there at the $5 tier. So just a quick little adjustment, and I thought you guys would like to know that. It's the beginning of a new year, so time to kind of make the adjustments and make yourself better. So
yeah, absolutely. So, all right, man. Well, yeah. Other than that, I think that's just expect a lot more great content from this year. There's a lot of signs pointing to Winds of Winter being somewhat announced in about July. I think that's there's the Worldcon that Gur is going to be attending, and he has said he wants to have wins in his hand when he goes to that convention. So everyone's kind of saying, I think this is finally about time that he'll kind of announce it. My guess is at Comic-Con, we're going to have a trailer or certainly a teaser for the new prequel show. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's going to be kind of, with Game of Thrones news, it's going to be just, it'll slowly start creeping and creeping and creeping. And then I'd say right around July, it's like things are going to really, really pick up because that prequel show is coming, I think, next year. So we'll be back to kind of where we were with season 8. And if Winds of Winter drops this year, who knows? How things.
and so you're saying, I just looked up. So Worldcon 2020 is July 29th through August 2nd of this year. So you're saying that's maybe when he'll announce it.
That he's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. He has said kind of in interviews and stuff that he wants to walk up onto that stage. Because he's been talking about this convention for a while over on his Nada blog and in interviews, and he's been saying, it's just my goal. I want to walk up on that stage with the book in my hand. Not obviously the finished printed book, but certainly like the manuscript. Mm-hmm. So I think he's my guess is he's going to walk up on the stage and he's just going to say, "I'm done." Or, it's finished, right? Or, you know what I mean? Like, people will go nuts.
Could you imagine? I would lose my mind. I mean, I would just...
Well, it would also be the perfect time because he's going to run into kind of a conundrum here, because if he doesn't finish it now, then who knows where we're going to be, because you've got the prequel that's coming out.
Yep.
Right, and that's, I think, 2021. They haven't said when, but my guess is probably around May 2021. Mm-hmm. Just because that's kind of when Game of Thrones always came out, so that seems to be like the right kind of time slot that HBO would push that. And if you're HBO, I think you're going to be kind of pushing for, we just got Fire and Blood Part 1, Fire and Blood Part 2. It's going to be coming at some point. And so if you don't, you're going to have that, while he didn't necessarily write Fire and Blood, he certainly assisted on it and all of this stuff. And that's time consuming. It'll be the same thing with Fire and Blood Part 2. And so I think, this is about the time that you're going to want that to finish. Otherwise you're going to get trapped in the height of the show and you'll never, ever get it done. So, I mean, it's literally kind of, I think, like now or never.
Yeah. So I just did, a quick little search. You guys there's tons of articles now talking about this. We had some of the hype going on before, right at the end of 2019 with the website, and that was sort of threw people off or whatever. But it does. He did say, according to several sources, I'm just looking at Express in the UK, indicating that Book 6, Winds of Winter, will be released this year. So he is I guess he has stated that. As you just said, and you specifically are pointing to it being, because I'm imagining if he announces it in July, then it wouldn't actually come out this year, would it? I mean, wouldn't it take maybe?
Ooh, it could come out holiday season.
Okay. Yeah, so, like one of those things where maybe they're holding off in the announcement until he goes to a con. Maybe it's done, by April or something. But a couple months later is when he announces it. It's that way that because we've looked at like once he announces it's finished. He talked about the process. What's another 6 months to kind of get it to
I'd say holiday season. I'd say I think it would be fair to expect it holiday season.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
That's kind of my expectation at this point because if you don't, then I don't know, man. I don't know because I do think the prequel show is going to be House of the Dragon is going to be enormous. I think it's going to be super successful. I mean, if you thought Game of Thrones was great, and you like the political intrigue in that and all of the warring and everything going on, well, now you're talking the Targaryen Civil War. Yeah, it's like the War of the Five Kings on steroids. I mean, it's like dragons fighting dragons. People are like assassinating each other in the Red Keep. I mean, it's pretty brutal.
So here, I found the exact quote. Yeah, you're right. From his blog, he said this, quote, "I tell you this, if I don't have the Winds of Winter in hand when I arrive in New Zealand for Worldcon, you have here my formal written permission to imprison me in the small cabin on White Island, overlooking that lake of sulfuric acid until I'm done. Just so long as the acrid fumes do not screw up my old DOS word processor, I'll be fine." So is that the New Zealand one? Okay, there we go. Yeah, so the dates will be July 29th to the 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants that in hand.
Well, also, if you released it in late 2020 or early 2021, it would be 10 years. Because Dance of Dragons was released in 2011.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, oh man,
think about how much you change, though. I can only imagine. That,
I know
that some of this has got to, or we'll never really know. I wonder if he'll if he's talking to somebody or recording something, just about how maybe the writing process has changed for him, or
right.
Yeah, I don't know. He's reading. He says this is the toughest one to write too because the characters are in a pretty. They're all in dire situations and things are looking bad. So it's tough.
Yeah.
We're in the winds of winter. So.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah. So. Crazy. Just crazy.
There it is. The man said it himself. So it's going to be out this year, folks. So get ready, get hyped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, do we have a captain's report today, Sir Ezra?
Yeah, we do. Yes. So we have something here from Lord Robert. Just sort of the holidays we had been kind of insane for I think everyone, and that's fair and fine. It was good to see family, good to relax, and all that good stuff. Let's see. He says, he's going to be out of the country for the next week or so. So here we are. Captain's report is this. Is Melisandre the daughter of Bloodraven and Shiera Seastar? So, like those two together, did they have a daughter or a child, and would that be Melisandre? And overwhelmingly, we had the response was no. There were a few individuals who said yes to this. So that's interesting. I think a lot of people have tied Shiera Seastar to Quaithe, possibly if she is still alive, with kind of masked, helping Daenerys, and wondering why she helps her. But would Melisandre then be their child? It's just kind of odd too, because then Melisandre sees into her flames, and she sees Bran and the old man, or the man with the wooden face, right? And she thinks it's the other. So unless she just has no idea what, who her parents are or whatever. I keep wondering actually when I read this and as we're prepping for this episode, I kind of thought, is George going to do something like that? I mean, does he set up all these things where it's like there could be tons of potential possible connections, but then none of them work out? You would have to imagine that there has to be a few that are going to land and connect. And I'm just thinking about ones we don't know about, so yeah, I don't know. Cause you're planning on doing an episode on Rhaegar again and the knights,
yeah.
Kingsguard, right? And so what happened to
Tormund kind of specifically, yeah.
Okay, Tormund, yeah. So it's like we have all this hinting that these characters are more than who they appear to be or whatever, but you just wonder if he's ever even going to answer any of that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he may not necessarily answer all of it directly, but you could certainly leave clues to hint at things indirectly, and I think that would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily have to come out and say specifically this is how it goes. It's kind of, even in season 8, I think you could make season 8 did season 8 really answer the Valonqar prophecy for us? I think it kind of in a way answered it, but left it a little ambiguous because Jaime comes and saves Cersei. They go down to the crypts and then it collapses on them. The Valonqar could be Tyrion, and that Tyrion was with Daenerys, and that was ultimately what killed Cersei. Or you could view it as Jaime, right? Because Jaime's the one that says, "Hey, no, let's go down here." And by her following that, then it was ultimately kind of in a way Jaime that leads her to her death. So, it's. I mean, it could. You could. I'm not saying that the books are going to go that way, but the Valonqar prophecy, you could certainly make the argument does come true, and so I think, in a way, you can answer things kind of like that somewhat ambiguously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's probably true. There's probably going to be like a mixed. Take every thread that's out there that we see going in this direction, and we don't really. We want to know where it ends. I think half of those he may answer, and the other half he's going to leave just open-ended for us to kind of use our imagination or to make inferences. And I almost think he has to, like really, or he's not going to. He'll never get this done. I mean, there's just,
right, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, and it's also a good thing to do. I think we live in a day and age where people kind of want everything, an answer to everything. And I like having enough there to where you could infer several, possibilities and go back and forth with individuals as to what you think is the more likely possibility based upon, multiple inferences and evidence that the author has left you in the text. I think that's kind of a cool thing, and it's something that we are losing a little bit. We want answers to absolutely everything, and I like a little bit of mystery, and so. We'll see. It's just whether he's going to wrap up enough of those threads to satisfy us, and then just leave a few dangling out there that he can maybe add some commentary on, later on and say, because it's kind of cool when an author finishes his series and is able to come back and say, "Yep, you're on to something there." Like that's where I was heading with that, or that's what I was thinking.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, so
yeah, absolutely. So okay. Well, did we kind of circled around there a little bit, but real quick here on is Melisandre the daughter of Bloodraven and Share Seastar, in kind of going off what you're saying with all these threads being tied up in Melisandre's thread, I don't know. And you said that the poll said overwhelmingly no.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying no. Yeah, there was a couple yeses, but for the most part, it was a
I
no.
think it's more likely that Melisandre is Share Seastar.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know that'd be kind of weird because she sees the face, but she may not know that that's Bloodraven, right? And she may not see that. Also, some people say that Share Seastar is Quaithe.
Yeah,
there's that kind of connection. Yeah,
yeah, and with glamours, people can be whoever and can look differently and stuff, and yeah, I think that's sort of why we're always questioning who these characters are and are they really who they've been presented to be, because sometimes we've seen that they aren't, and so I mean we have faceless men, as I said I think a couple episodes ago. It's sort of like, what the heck, I mean, like, yeah, literally somebody's wearing somebody else's face. So can't who can we trust? I don't know. I mean,
exactly,
stuff.
Yeah. Exactly,
but it's fascinating, right. and also I want to put this in here too. We had some some discussion on the Facebook group. Fire and Blood. There is in that second half of the first volume. There's a lot there, and we're gonna get to a Raven later on that kind of discusses some of this mystery here in the histories and some of our older characters and how it ties into the new batch of our Song of Ice and Fire series, as well as tie-ins to the show to satisfy us as we go into that. And then what do we do now that we're sitting here waiting for Winds of Winter? So it's a great Raven that we'll discuss at the end of the show here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, well, let's head on over to the reread. Last time we were in Arya 2. It's where Arya and the others had encountered more refugees every day as they continued to journey north on the King's Road. One evening, they had halted at an inn where they hear news of the war in the Riverlands. Outside the inn, Arya talks with the prisoner Jaqen H'ghar. Soon after, 6 gold cloaks arrive with an arrest warrant for the bull, but Yoren refuses, and after a tense standoff, the gold cloaks retreat. So now we're on to Jon I, but the last time we were with Jon was Jon 9 of A Game of Thrones. Jon deserts in the middle of the night, determined to join his brother Robb in the quest for vengeance. South of Molestown, his friends catch up with him and bring him back. In the morning, Lord Commander Mormont reveals he knows about the night's events and convinces Jon to stay and join him on a great ranging beyond the wall. Yeah. This time, Jon 1. Jon Snow finds Samwell Tarly in the dark library cellar of Castle Black, where Sam has found a number of maps for the Great Ranging. Out in the courtyard, they watch the new recruits practicing, and Jon talks with Donal Noy. After they present their maps, Lord Commander Jeor Mormont discusses Maester Aemon's past with Jon. Yeah, and so this week we have one of the coolest characters, I think, that is only in the books, and that is Donal Noy. We'll learn a little bit more about him as this chapter goes on, but he was kind of a Baratheon man, and he's a weapon forger, and he forged King Robert's Warhammer, so he's certainly a pretty cool character. Kind of serves as we go forward here, especially in this book. Kind of a voice of reason for Jon, and not really a father figure, but kind of some of that like the advice you would get from like older people, kind of a village council or something. Yeah. He's definitely an interesting character, and it is kind of cool. And you have to kind of remember when folks come here to the Wall, who were they before? Even though you're supposed to, it's this new thing, we're all brothers and everything. There's some major treachery that's going to be going on in this book and here at the Night's Watch. So it's fascinating because we've been taught that, wow, no, it's none of that stuff matters. You can make yourself anew here, and what have you. There's actually a great conversation between Jeor and Jon in this chapter, and we've talked about Aemon Targaryen and what happened to him, his loyalties, and what do you do? I mean, right now Robb is marching to war, and Jon's just, he already ran once, and now he's back, and he's dedicated himself to this war to come. They're fighting their own war here in the north, but it's important, I guess, just to kind of know where loyalties used to lie, because it can be a big deal in this. Yeah. So, all right. Well, as always, I'll read kind of the first little passage here. Sam, Jon called softly. The air smelled of paper and dust and years. Before him, tall wooden shelves rose up into dimness, crammed with leather-bound books and bins of ancient scrolls. A faint yellow glow filtered through the stacks from some hidden lamp. Jon blew out the taper he carried, preferring not to risk an open flame amidst so much old, dry paper. Instead, he followed the light, wending his way down through the narrow aisles. Beneath barrel-vaulted ceilings, all in black, he was shadowed amongst shadows. Dark of hair, long of face, gray of eye. Black moleskin gloves covered his hands, the right because it was burned, the left because a man felt half a fool wearing only one glove. Samwell Tarly sat hunched over a table in a niche carved into the stone of the wall. The glow came from the lamp hung over his head. He looked up at the sound of Jon's steps. "Have you been here all night?" "Have I?" Sam looked startled. Yeah, and so that's kind of I think a good place right there. Sam, you and I were talking about this before the show, is that it's really interesting at kind of the beginning of this chapter, because Sam is sitting here and he's supposed to be looking for maps, so they can to help them on their ranging, but he gets kind of caught up in the books that he's reading, and he's reading about all of these what he finds to be interesting things, and he's telling them all to Jon, and Jon thinks they're kind of boring, and who really cares? And I just think it's interesting, not to jump super far away ahead here, but in the show, it's kind of the reverse. We see this later, right, where Gilly is telling Sam about all of these things she's finding in books, and Sam's like, nobody cares about that. Like, I'm looking for something else. But I think they find some pretty interesting stuff here in these books.
Yeah, they do. There's he says at one point there are thousands. It seems like it's more than what was kept at Winterfell, and also this is one of the oldest forts, if you will,
libraries.
Yeah. So they've had tons of resources brought up this way, and a lot of times when they would go to recruit in the South, they wanted parchment, they wanted ink, they wanted ravens and what have you, but they even wanted books. They collected books, and then they kept their own books. They have maesters who wrote down what took place, and they had accounts of rangings and stuff, which is fascinating. So, just a quick tie-in to that Christmas episode, and we mentioned it there. I'll mention it again here. It's believed that maybe a faceless man or someone who was interested in a famous book was looking in two of the oldest places that you could find this book, like How to Kill a Dragon, if you will, or just more about dragons. And it was believed it was either up at the wall or that it was in the Citadel library, just because they are super old and vast, and they have a lot of resources. So it's just fascinating that somebody would. So that was sort of the tie-in there, is that maybe Jaqen H'ghar was on his way north, and you would say, for what reason? Why is he captured by the Night's Watch? What would he need or be desiring in at the wall? And it may be, and it's funny too, because this chapter takes place right after. Just shortly after the Arya situation, where we just discussed, that he's a person of interest, and his means to get to the north are cut off, and he has to. We see him appear later on, several books later, in another part of Westeros, looking for important books and looking around a place of knowledge. So, just kind of fascinating to think about, something to stir the mind up a little bit as to what all is here, and what resources can they find. There's hinting that they're accounts of the Night's Watch fighting dragons. We know later on that dragon glasses. I'm sorry, did I say dragons? Giants. And then there's an account of dragon glass and what it was maybe used for. Just a lot of different stuff. And really, right now, Sam is only supposed to be, as you said, Sir Matt, looking for maps, because they're trying to get an accurate lay of the land, I guess, as they take a large force north. So,
yeah, and it's kind of interesting here. So one of the things he finds here, he says, this is an account of a journey from the Shadow Tower all the way to Lorne Point on the frozen shores, written by a ranger named Redwyn. It's not dated, but he mentions a Doran Stark as king in the north. So it must be from before the conquest, Aegon's conquest. Jon, they fought giants. Redwyn even traded with the children of the forest. It's all here. So, that's certainly pretty interesting that they're talking about the giants and children of the forest. But some people could say, well, that's just in the book, in the series. I'm not saying us, but that's just all just fairy tale and stuff like that. But it's really interesting that here's another area where they're talking about these kind of things, because the more history you have in Gur doing, I think, a really good job of world building here, the more history you have of talking about children of the forest and giants and all of these different locations, well, then it certainly adds more validity to those, not just being old Nan stories.
Right. Yeah, it does. And it also kind of, if this is a place that we come back to for knowledge, it validates that, we're able to kind of just cross-reference stuff, and then it just sort of takes it from, well, is it, because one thing Sam wants to do is he wants to organize it, because it is a little bit of a mess. But yeah, it's a place that we can come back to and find some really good information. But it's all about too, like, yeah, how far back do these resources go? And you look at how things have changed and stuff. But it gives a lot of credence to, as you say, Old Nan and those stories and some of these legends that we've been hearing about, for sure.
Yeah, this vault is a treasure, Jon. Jon, if you say so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he says, I do. He says, I found drawings of the faces in the trees, a book about the tongue of the children of the forest, works that even the Citadel doesn't have. Scrolls from old Valyria, counts of the seasons written by maesters dead 1,000 years. These books will still be here when we return, if we return. And some of these maps he's finding are so old, and that we see this later. They're so old that they don't really help them at all. But it's, I think Sam has a good part where he says, "Yeah, but the geography's still the same. There might be, So
right, that might not have changed too much for sure. It, villages and stuff maybe, but
may
overall,
move, but
yeah, the
right.
passageways, the rivers and things, yeah. And Sam doesn't want to go. I mean, he is hoping he can just get these maps and resources, and I'm so much better here. Let me organize this. It's the wealth of knowledge. But he's been requesting, and he's supposed to ride north with them, and he's super worried about that, right?
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, they talk about Maester Aemon, right? And they talk about who's going to go. He says, the old bear is taking 2 cages of ravens, so they might send word back as they went. Maester Aemon was blind and far too frail to ride with them, so his steward must go in his place. We need you for the ravens, Sam. Sam, if I were Sam, I would be saying, well, I need to be here to take care of Maester Aemon, but. Yeah. We need you here so that we can communicate back and forth with each other.
Yeah, and he is. We know. Gosh, besides Maester Aemon, like, he is someone who is probably the best that they have in terms of working maybe with the ravens and penciling down and jotting down what they need to know. Like I guess kind of journaling as they go north, and then even maybe communicating back with Castle Black as quickly as possible. So, because they're going to gather like literally the best ravens and make sure that they're well prepared to go north here. And so he's the one that they need. I mean, Maester Aemon's going to be he's going to be well taken care of. The cold preserves, right? So he's going to be he'll be fine. Yeah.
And so then you have Sam, who's scared. We're all scared. And then I really like this line here from Jon. There's no shame in fear, my father told me. What matters is how we face it.
Yeah. Right. Well, and this is going to be, I guess, if you look at Sam as a character too. So as his journey starts, he's going to face his fears, right? He's going to face his fears, and he's going to overcome them. He's going to be a different man when he returns. Very different. He's going to have acquired a lot more knowledge about, that will be useful in the wars to come, in this great war. Even though he is still going to be scared in some regards, he's less scared, I guess. But he's always going to have that nature where blood makes him queasy. He doesn't want to be in harm's way and stuff. But this is a big thing for Sam. Big thing. He never would have done anything like this in the South, and here he's literally a part of a host that's going into the most dangerous territory that you can go into right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then let's see here. So they're getting ready kind of to leave here. I really like this line right here. Is they're kind of Sam squinted up at the wall. It loomed above them, an icy cliff 700 feet high. Sometimes it seemed to Jon almost a living thing, with moods of its own. The color of the ice was wont to change with every shift of the light. Now it was the deep blue of the frozen rivers, now the dirty white of old snow, and when a cloud passed before the sun, it darkened to the pale gray of pitted stone. The wall stretched east and west as far as the eye could see, so huge that it shrunk the timbered keeps and stone towers of the castle to insignificance. It was the end of the world, and we are going beyond it. Yeah, I mean, the wall is almost, it kind of signifies safety. right? I mean, that's its entire purpose. And now we're going to go on out into the wildlands. You know, that we keep up until this point. If you were just reading this for the first time, you would keep hearing about, well, beyond the wall, beyond the wall, beyond the wall. Well, now we're going beyond the wall.
Yeah, it's one of those things too that George is always, when he what is it, Hadrian's Wall, right, where he was. I mean, that was sort of the inspiration for the story, right? That these men would stand at the edge of an empire and look out into the wilderness, into lands that were wild and people who were air quote wild, and that you would have to fight against those people and keep them out, and that sometimes you'd have to march into the unknown and face your enemy over there. So yeah, he's been building towards this, and here we go. Now we are going, as you said, beyond this boundary and into some danger.
And it's interesting right here, right after this line of and we are going beyond it, they begin to then start talking about the comet. The comet's so bright you can see it by day now, Sam said, shading his eyes with a fistful of books. Never mind about the comets, it's the maps the old bear wants. So I just think, again, here we hear about the comet. It's just kind of put right in here into this point to where we're going beyond the wall. And I just think it's kind of interesting. And then right after that, you shift to this line here about where Jon is thinking. As they passed the sept, he heard voices raised in song. Some men want horrors on the eve of battle, and some want gods. Jon wondered who felt better afterward. The sept tempted him no more than the brothel. His own gods kept their temples in the wild places where the weirwood spread their bone-white branches. The seven have no power beyond the wall, he thought, but my gods will be waiting.
Yep.
And so I just think it's really interesting that we have this line about the comet here, which, you know, everyone's still trying to figure out what it is and what its significance is, sandwiched in for the Jon chapter, certainly sandwiched in between him leaving the safety of the wall, kind of going out on his first ranging, and you could view it almost as becoming the man he's supposed to be, and this idea about his gods and how they're different than the seven. And so I just think that's really interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like they talk about vows too, and they talk about sort of, it's the eve of, if you will, like a battle, and some men are seeking whores, and you know, Jon says that he took a vow, and then right after that, as you say, he sees a sept, and it doesn't tempt him at all, because he's not tempted by those gods. That they're not going to turn him away from the gods who will protect him as he marches into the wild. His gods, are waiting for him. That's super awesome to think about, that their power, that's where they're probably most powerful. I mean, you know, so with the in the groves and stuff as we go north. So that's really cool. I mean, I think it's like it's weird too, because these gods once had great power in all of Westeros, and you still see there's the sacred weirwood groves and the Isle of Faces and stuff, but they're just not as dense. And then now we're going to a place where the old gods really will be in power and will be speaking to Jon, whispering. There'll be a wind through the leaves that this might be the speech of old gods to Jon. He might not know what they're saying, but they'll be speaking to him in some way. So that'll be kind of neat. And then from there, we move back into he takes a look at these new recruits. Right, so Alistair Thorne is out. He is no longer he's no longer training. So you get Ser Ezra, right, Tarth, who is there, and it's a lot more easier going on some of these recruits. They talk about this is the first time we get like the wandering crows, and you get a reference to crows who do wander the Seven Kingdoms to get recruits, and so we have one of those who has brought, I think, a small batch of them here. Let's see. Oh, who were they? It gives a really good description, and they come up later on.
Right, and where did we find them? A lord's dungeon near Gulltown.
Yep. Yeah. So you've got a raggedy man. You've got one soiled in satin. You've got let's see, two twins are there as well, which is interesting. So, but yeah, they're all there. Later on too, when we get into some of the fighting and we have to kind of protect Castle Black. So
Yeah, and then this is where we start to meet Donald Noy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is certainly I think one of the coolest characters. What do you make of them? Snow. Donald Noy stood in the door of his armory, bare chested under a leather apron. So he's bare chested, but he's armoring, so it's probably is pretty warm in that room. The stump of his left arm uncovered for once, with his big gut and barrel chest, his flat nose and bristly black jaw. Noy did not make a pretty sight, but he was a welcome one. He was a welcome one nonetheless. The armorer had proved himself a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, then he starts talking to Jon a little bit. He says, they say you forged his warhammer. Talking about Robert. He says, I was his man, a Baratheon man, smith and armorer at Storm's End until I lost the arm. I'm old enough to remember Lord Stefan before the sea took him, and I knew those 3 sons of his since they got their names. I'll tell you this, Robert was never the same after he put on the crown. Some men are like swords, made for fighting. Hang them up, and they go to rust. And his brothers, the armor considered a moment. Robert was the true steel. Stannis is pure iron, black and hard and strong, yes, but brittle the way iron gets. He'll break before he bends. And Renly, that one he's copper, bright and shiny, pretty to look at, but not worth all that much at the end of the day. And then and then in his mind he's thinking, and what metal is Robb? Because he's thinking about Robb.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, for sure. And this is a character who it's important that although he wasn't a good sight to look at, he was a friend, and that's really important for Jon, because at the end of this his first ranging, it'll be very important that he has friends back at Castle Black, and Donald Noy will be one of those people who still trust Jon Snow. He's asking him for his opinion right here on some of these boys or the recruits who are here being trained. And yeah, I don't know if it's a tie back to Baratheon and Stark loyalty, if it's known that those houses get along and he likes Jon, or is it just that he's measuring Jon based upon what he's seen up here at Castle Black and he thinks he's a good guy? Is it a combination of both?
Maybe a little. I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. So pretty neat, and he's an epic dude. I mean, he ends up being very important for Castle Black and the Wall in general, I guess, as we get into the next couple books. So
yeah, he's a character who some of the big scenes you've seen in the show, if this is maybe your first time reading the book series, some of the big scenes at the Battle of Castle Black, if you think back to that battle, where it's actually Donald Noy who plays a big role in some of those scenes. He's not in the show because he's not introduced, but he actually, a lot of those big moments, he's there. So
yeah. And the other thing too, I got to keep remembering is that Benjen Stark has been there for a long time as well, and has built up this reputation.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they're all wanting Jon to bring his uncle back because I think
they like him, and he's a good guy, and he's important,
very smart. Seemed to know a lot, and I think everyone looked up to him and trusted him. You felt safer knowing that he was there patrolling the Wall or out ranging and stuff. They felt better about that, and men would follow him. So. Yeah, so now they're kind of looking to Jon, and it's really a way to kind of accelerate a character's growth in a story, right? It's like instead of him having to wait behind not just the old bear who's been there for a long time, it would have been his uncle. They would have turned to his uncle, but his uncle's gone. Now he has to go, find his uncle and rescue him if he can. So and see what's going on, because they're losing Rangers, and they've got the hand still. We're gonna get to that. They've got the the undead hand and trying to figure out what to do with all that. So
yeah, absolutely. So okay, so then he's basically gonna he leaves Donald Noy here. He says, I won't keep you from the old bear, and this is where Jon is gonna start walking up to talk to him, and then we hear the bird Snow, the bird shrieked. Mormont broke off his conversation. Took you long enough with those maps. He says, put them here. I'll have a look at them later. And then he begins to start talking to Mormont as they are kind of getting ready to start doing their plans here a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. There's sort of the argument happens here. Right? We get into a little bit of a back and forth with what would be the first ranger, but
right, Smallwood, Thorin Smallwood. He's like, I'm first ranger now with Ben Stark lost and Sir Jeremy killed. The command should be mine. And then Mormont says, I sent out Ben Stark, and Sir Waymar before him. I do not mean to send you out after them and sit wondering how long I must wait before I give up on you for lost as well. He said, and Stark remains first ranger until we know for certain that he is dead. Should that day come, it will be me who names his successor, not you. Stop wasting my time. We ride at first light, or have you forgotten?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so you don't mess with the old bear. I mean, he's, he's in charge, and really he doesn't want to. This pattern is going to continue. If he keeps sending rangers out there, losing some of their best men, who would be almost like a commander in your force if you were attacked or whatever, and they're all back there. These are the men you really kind of lean on, and who people, I guess, they would look to if ever you were attacked by Mance Rayder. So. Mm-hmm. Doesn't, even though this is a guy who was Alistair Thorne's one of his boys, he's still a pretty tough dude, and he's one of the Rangers. So we don't want to lose him, and we're going to go out and figure this out on our own. We really need to go out together in a force to make sure that everything is just to figure out what's going on, because the idea that Benjen wouldn't come back, or there's no trace of him, that we've lost 2 good Rangers, is just super disturbing. Those are the eyes. Those are the eyes for the Crows. I mean, they're the ones who kind of keep everybody informed. So,
yeah. Well, and this ranging by Morma is, I think it's not like he's like, well, let's just go out there and see what happens. I mean, it seems like he's ready to go to war, because here we have Sam bringing him the maps, right? And he's is this all you could find? The Sam starts stuttering a little bit. He's like, these are old. He says, the villages may have come and go, but the hills and rivers will be in the same places, Jon pointed out. Truly enough. And then he says, have you chosen the ravens yet? He says, Maester Aemon means to pick them himself. He says, I'll have his best. Then the bird says strongs. And so he wants, this is a big deal for him.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of going to be his almost legacy moment, kind of.
Yeah, it is. And before he goes, too, he's trying to make sure that he has support from the realm. And right now, you've got several people declared king. And that's sort of a conversation here that takes place. There's a little bit of, do we send Sam Tarly down to his father and try to maybe get close to Renly and see if Renly can give us some support? And they ultimately decide to go with the Fossaway, which is... pretty cool that we've got a reference to the old Fossaways there. A green apple Fossaway, by the way, Sir Arnell. So that's the thing. We're trying to get support from them. It's interesting that he mentions Renly, and then we know what happens with Stannis, later on in the series, coming to their aid, if you will, via Melisandre. But, So but that's important, that before he goes on, as you said, this great ranging where it's going to define him. I mean, this is his defining moment, really, and he is the old bear. I know he wants to gather intel and he wants to go north here, but there's 2 things that have to be on his mind, right? You've got Mance Rayder and his host,
right?
Rumors of him and the wildlings, but then you also have the undead. You know
exactly.
White Walkers and the such, and rumors and
right. Well, and you could consider giants and just anything. You could kind of just consider that. Really, it's almost 3, right? Because you've got the others and the undead, and then you've got just the rest of the north. You kind of consider all the dangers that just lie north beyond the wildlings and the others. I mean, just the cold, the shadow cats, and all of that kind of stuff that are out there.
Right. Yep. Exactly. All right. So really, after that, things get kind of settled there, and they, as they're making their plans, you sort of get an idea of where other people were set up. You learn more about Alistair Thorne, but really the conversation switches and it shifts to Maester Aemon unexpectedly. Really.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And just kind of his his history. We learn quite a bit more about Maester Aemon here. John says, John, do you know that he might have been king? And it's because of kind of John's loyalty, right? Because the last time John was riding out to Molestown, and so Mormont again just wants to make sure, are you going to ride north? Are you here to play? Are you here to go?
That's right.
And so he says, did you know that he might have been king at some point? And so John says he was taken by surprise. He told me his father was king, but not, I thought him perhaps a younger son. So he was. His father was Daeron Targaryen, the second of his name, who brought Dorne into the realm. That's Daeron the good. Part of the pact that he was wed a Dornish princess. She gave him 4 sons. Aemon's father, Maekar, was the youngest of those, and Aemon was his 3rd son. Mind you, all of this happened long before I was born, ancient as Smallwood would make me. Maester Aemon was named for the Dragon Knight. Some say Prince Aemon was King Daeron's true father. That's not Aegon the Unworthy, but that is. But be that as it may, our Aemon lacked the Dragon Knight's martial nature. He likes to say he had a slow sword but quick wits. Small wonder his grandfather packed him off to the Citadel. He was 9 or 10, I believe, and the 9th or 10th in the line of succession as well. And we know that line falls all the way to Aegon the Fifth, Aegon the Unlikely, because of that, because he's so far down in the line of succession. Aemon actually would have been ahead of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was sort of the thing is it's unknown. And Maester Aemon kind of confirms this, that he was offered. Secretly, there was a quiet offer to him to give up his chain and to become king, which is fascinating. Yeah. I mean, what are the odds of that? And so that's where you can kind of understand. I think it was the High Septon was going to, it was going to release him,
pardon him, right,
from his vows, and really they weren't. Maester's vows maybe aren't as serious as the Night's Watch vows are, or what have you, or even Knight's vows. So.
Well, and we've talked about that, and I don't know that it's ever specifically stated in the books. If you go to the Citadel to become a Maester, and then you are dispatched from the Citadel to go to the Night's Watch, are you really? I mean, it certainly seems that way, that they consider themselves, well, we're men of the Night's Watch. But I wonder if the realm would be more forgiving, let's say, of somebody who, unlike Sam. Like Sam goes to the Night's Watch and then goes to the Citadel to become a Maester, as opposed to being a Maester who gets, say, dispatched to the Night's Watch. Yeah. And so even if then they said, well, we want to make him king, I feel like the realm would be maybe more forgiving of that, or just maybe not care as much. Yeah. If it were that way than the other way around, where it's like, well, no, he's a man of the Night's Watch. So it's just kind of interesting to think about, like, that's kind of where he's sent to go.
Well, yeah, and you wonder too. I mean, do Maesters, like, we only just have Maester Aemon to go off of here, but like, when they go to Castle Black, do they all have to become members of the Knights? Men of the Night's Watch. Yeah, right? Night's Watch.
Well, it's kind of interesting because Stannis goes, and Stannis just kind of, but Stannis is like, well, I'm king, so I guess it's kind of different, I guess.
Yeah, and he's going there.
It's interesting, yeah.
Because like you said, Sam has said the words, but then he would, if he were to forge a collar. Or a chain, I should say, and that would be, he might have to say their words and swear some more vows.
Maybe you could be, like, because we see Tyrion go and just kind of hang out and then leave.
Yeah.
So maybe you could be a Maester. Like, you go to the Citadel to become a Maester, you get sent to the Wall as kind of your post, but maybe you wouldn't have to say the words. Maybe you could kind of just be there.
So here's
basically,
yeah.
It's a really like specific and interesting place, because it's like the only scenario in which that really happens.
Yeah. So I think what happened, and I could be wrong, but I just going off of memory here, I actually think Maester Aemon chooses to become a member of the Night's Watch because he was worried that they would use him in a plot to, or versus his younger brother, and he wanted to make sure that there was no way they could do that. If you become a member of the Night's Watch, then you have no part in these politics. You're above and away, really. I mean, you're a part of the Wall and the Night's Watch, and so you don't take part in the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah, well, hold on. That's the wrong wiki. That's the show wiki, but I'm sure it's similar.
Yeah, I can also say too.
I think it is. I think you're right. Aemon chose to go to the Wall and join the Night's Watch for fear that he might be used in a plot to usurp his brother. I'm wondering where that's specifically from. In A Feast for Crows, chapter 15, in the World of Ice and Fire, Aegon V is where we learn about the little bit more of the specifics of him and his going to the Wall.
Right. Because the thing was too, before let me think here, and I don't know whether that means. Because I remember that part. I don't know if it means just that he chose to go be a maester there, or if he actually, when he got there, became a member of the Night's Watch. I think there can be two separate things. I think he actually became a member of the Night's Watch, and that's...
Yeah, I think he was at the Citadel, and... Because remember, he's training at the Citadel when, Egg is alive. Because I think Egg talks about it in one of the books. I think it's the third one where he specifically says it.
Yeah.
In the third Duncan Egg, the Mystery Night. But, regardless. So my guess is that he's training to become a maester and then decides while he's there to go to the Wall. And when he goes to the Wall, I think his trip north is with Bloodraven.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they have a king's, they have an escort.
Yeah, because he goes, and because that's Egg's first act of business, and so Aemon must not have been in the Night's Watch at the time that the Great Council was held. Right,
and I have something, I think, something great for us to do on our extended edition here.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm starting to think of here. Yeah, is to kind of dive into that a little bit more.
There's people on the Reddit who have asked sort of the same thing, and I think we can look in that. A little bit more, but we'll go. I think the whole point is that he there, and this is sort of what Aemon had said to him, is that he had this choice. I bet even as a member of the Night's Watch, as you said, he could, if he really wanted to go back and give counsel or whatever. Well, and actually later on, we had just done the Christmas episode, and Marwyn actually says that it's a shame that Maester Aemon was never recalled, or that he wasn't called back to sort of be a Archmaester. So maybe that does mean they considered him to still be more a member of their order than a part of this order of the Night's Watch. Can you still be a member of the Night's Watch and serve in the
Senate? What is also just incredibly interesting here is we often talk a lot about the people we see that are essentially influencers, right, of our main characters. With Arya, you have Syrio Forel and Jack and Hagar and the Hound, and those are the people that help shape her personality into who we see her become towards as we get towards the end of the series. Sansa has Cersei and Peter Baelish, that kind of guide her to become the person she becomes. Well, isn't it kind of interesting here that you have Maester Aemon, who had the chance to be king and chose essentially duty over the ability to become king. And then also Mance Rayder is such an important character, and certainly if Mance Rayder is all the big theory up there about possibly him being Rhaegar or whatever, that is in its own right. But just simply you have Mance Rayder, who is someone who is king beyond the Wall, and he is king for really the right reasons, right? He unites people because he wants to get them south to save his people. And then he's also really kind of influenced by Stannis Baratheon, someone who is trying to become king through force. So it's just really interesting that you have these three kings being the people who are influencing Jon, who certainly I think again, certainly in the show, and again most likely to become the king in this are the people that are influencing Jon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that is interesting, and there's tons of foreshadowing in all of those individuals being the ones.
Exactly. But I just think it's kind of most interesting with Jon is that it's not just people who have the ability to become king, but it's people who have the ability to become king in very different reasons that are the ones that are influencing Jon. You have just in Aemon, who had it but said no, I don't want it. Mance Rayder, who really could really care less about being king beyond the wall. He just wants to help his people. I don't think he really cares about the title king.
Yeah.
And then you have Stannis, who's saying it's mine by right. It's
right.
this is, and in his eyes, he doesn't want to just become king because he feels it's his. He also wants to, kind of put Joffrey down because, Joffrey is not the right king. So I just think it's interesting. Kind of an interesting point.
Yeah. Those who they kind of, who are the people around you? Who are your cast of individuals who are shaping you and influencing you and pulling you one way or the other? Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Okay, so let's just dive back into more of Maester Aemon and his story here, really, which is just that he was passed over. He chose not to become king, right? And Egg, this is why Egg, the unlikely, sort of becomes king, and he marches north with Bloodraven and Dunk, I think, actually is part of their escort too. So at one point, I don't know. Anyways, we can look into that more. Dunk was a part of the escort, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. So, anyways, okay. Where were we at here? So after that,
so he's just running down kind of his family history to talk about all of the people that died. They talk about Darren, they talk about Arian Brightflame a little bit, and how he dies. His little brother. One of the more gruesome tales. He's the one who tries to drink a jar of wildfire, thinking it would turn him into a dragon. And certainly there's a lot more on him if you read The Hedge Knight. It says King Maekar died in a battle against an outlaw lord a year after. And so just kind of talking about how the lords passed over all of these people and eventually kind of come to him. And then it ends up going to Egg. And then they just talk a little about how the Targaryen line is put to end. He says when Jaime Lannister put an end to the line of the Dragon Kings. And this is a chapter because the Raven keeps croaking king and king and king. A lot of people point to this chapter to talk about the foreshadowing of the Raven with Jon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll actually circle back to that as
Yes, I mean certainly here I think he means for you to have a crown, my lord, because the bird keeps saying king.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and we're talking about how he and Aemon both had a brother who was king, and it's sort of the opposite. Aemon was offered to him, but he didn't accept it. But this is something that wasn't offered to Jon, but he may, according to the show, it may be offered to him later. It may come. So it's kind of a flip, I guess, in that regard.
And then it ends up going to their younger brother, who is it's incredibly unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
Egg, and then in the show, possibly Bran.
Yeah,
Bran may not be his real brother, but
sure. But yeah, it's still kind of that parallel a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
So now this is interesting. Last little conversation here is Mormont talking to him about all of this. He really just sort of rubs it in. I mean, not rubs it in, but I think he's really testing Jon here and kind of saying, they talk about vows for a minute, and he says, if I had a man for every vow that was taken, the Night's Watch would be completely garrisoned, and but all these vows have been broken and what have you, and he kind of dismisses the idea of a vow meaning anything really. Although he says he doesn't, when he says that Jon keeps saying we don't just have and Maester Aemon and I don't just have a brother, who was king in common. We also have a vow in common, which I think makes so Maester Aemon did take the Night's Watch vow.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think he even says. Well, we'll go back to that. That's something I was going to follow up later because I think he says that earlier when he's talking to him. So yeah, he talks about how they're going to garb his brother in all these different types of fabrics, and they're going to call him Your Grace, and he's going to marry and have children and everything, and he basically tries to get Jon to say that tell me, Jon, that's going to trouble you, and if you don't say it's going to trouble you, then I'll name you a liar. And he wants to sort of know the truth of it. And Jon says, if it did trouble me, what might I do, bastard as I am? What will you do? Mormont asked. Bastard as you are. Jon says, be troubled and keep my vows. So, I mean, for now.
Yeah.
Although here's my thing. I'm a big defender of Jon, because we were talking. I did the whole in defense of Jon Snow in regards to the Pink Letter and everything and whatnot. But talk about him breaking his vow. Did he? I mean, did he really break his vows, or was he always just defending, the realms, right? I mean, the realms of men.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Using a flaming sword. Maybe he was. So. I don't know. Just saying that later on, I think when people say he breaks his vow, I'm not so sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I think he did.
I'm not either.
For the right reasons.
I'm not either. Yeah.
Kind of a joke.
Okay.
Hopefully somebody found the joke that was in there. Okay. Yeah. Moving on. That was basically the chapter, and it's got. There's actually those recruits. Something maybe we'll do, we can extend a little bit more to, is talk about those recruits and their significance later on. There's a small band of them who come in here, and we get some of their names, some of them we don't, but they'll kind of hang around for a little bit and be important. So, all right, let's see here. With that, let's move over to Send a Raven.
Send a Raven.
Yeah. So we have Elodie here. Who sent us this was actually on Facebook in our group, and if you haven't had a chance to join there, please go like and join in the conversation. But she had recently just finished her reread, and she started with book 3 a couple months ago, and just tore through the series. Let's see. She says, now what do I do with myself? Sure, I know that the last book that the last book we have. She's read that book, right? But it doesn't change the fact that I'm now frustrated. So this is sort of what we're dealing with, right? As you get to the end of a series, and we're waiting on the next book. So you get kind of caught up. You've seen the show, and you're reading the book, and you're wondering, what do we do? I've read the book a few times. I've read the books a few times each, but this is the first time in a while I did a full reread in correct order. So it might be why it's hitting me more than usual. Anyway, I am still really enjoying myself, refreshing my memory on what's book canon and what is not. We still have so much to look forward to. I forgot how far behind compared to the show we were, and I cannot wait to see how it goes. And that's a really good point. I mean, it's a really good point. That's why I think it could be vastly different to say we're going to get to say we're going to cover all of that in 2 books is exciting.
That's
and I think it's probably going to be very fast paced then, and things are going to move quick. She goes on to say, I've read Fire and Blood recently too, so I'm up to date with all things Westerosi. So I think I'll just listen to the adventures of Dunk and Egg, and I think that's great. That's very smart. We've said in the past that's one of our favorites.
Absolutely, I think that's the best place to go.
Yep. So she's read them, but just got the audiobook, and she's excited to listen to that, and I think it does. The audiobook is fantastic. So side note, Dance was published in 2011. I didn't think it was so long ago. How does time fly? Anyways, I guess I don't have much to say, just hoping that 2020 is indeed the year of Winds of Winter. The plot points are the most that she's most excited to be resolved or explained. What are, I guess, your
right
most excited plot points? What do you want to see resolved? Sorry, that's just trying to read that there. As a Sansa fan, I am really eager to see where her story will go next, as her, as was kind of what we saw in the show. I guess you kind of want to maybe compare the two. Arc was given to a completely different character. That's a good point. Yeah, so so it leaves her totally disconnected so far from where she ended up in the show. That's true. So in the book, I mean, her path right now is still a distant
pretty different.
One. Yeah, it's distant
Pretty different
from Winterfell. Yeah, and although she's a Stark, yeah. Is that still going to land and end the same way because she's been so distant, or it looks like the books are going to keep her away from Winterfell. Is the way it looks like up until maybe the very end.
Yeah, exactly. Because that stuff going on with Ramsay is with a different woman than Sansa, so it's pretty different.
Yeah. She goes on to say here, so I'm wondering if any of you have any theories about that. Let's see. I know Sansa, Elaine is not the most popular topic of prediction when it comes to wins. It's difficult to complete when other characters are prophesied as maybe heroes, have magic, dragons, or assassins in training, and the like, but I can't help to wonder about her while wishing I could take her away from Lord Creepyfingers. Also, I forgot how Ramsay was so reading about the horrors that he commits in the story was very uncomfortable. Poor Jane and everyone who comes across him. Let's see. Love to read about Dorne, less so about the Iron Islands, though. That's all for now. I hope to hear from some of you in the comments, gentle ladies and sirs. And so I liked this because this is someone who had just recently kind of finished up her reread and having started from beginning, just marching all the way through. And I agree with her a lot. I do like hearing about Dorne, and I'm excited about what's going to happen in Winds of Winter, around Ariana and just sort of that whole, are there secrets in Dorne? The Iron Islands, I don't really care too much about. I mean, it's interesting when you look at the North and in Dance of Dragons and sort of what the Ironborn or what they're doing. Are they working with the Iron Bank and what's happening there? So that's cool. And you do kind of wonder. I am now thinking more about where characters are in relationship to where they are now in the book and where they are in the show, and how different those locations may be, and how is that going to affect our character getting to the same endpoint, and will they get to the same endpoint, or is that another character who might get there?
Well, the Iron Islands in the show, man, I mean they're pretty far off from what we see in the books. I mean, Euron's trying to marry Daenerys. We don't really Well, and so in the show he ends up getting with Cersei. Yeah.
And that's where I wonder, like, that still could go the same way, I guess. Maybe it's like he's seeking a marriage, and what they skipped in the show is that he sought a marriage with Daenerys. It didn't work out because he sent his brother, and he's trying to, sound Dragonbinder and bind the dragons, but then also claim Daenerys as his own wife, and so that may be a failed attempt for Euron, and so maybe then he turns to Cersei because of her circumstances. So maybe it still does go that same way, but we just skipped a big step, if that makes sense. I think you could maybe make that conclusion. So, and those are the things we want to do in Green Dreams, really. The same stuff here that Elodie is kind of talking about. Like, we would love to sort of think about where these characters are going to go, and the treachery that could take place and stuff. I mean, I don't know. I think Victarion out there, Greyjoy, hopefully I think he's gonna die, and I don't think he would want to go back and face his brother.
Binder.
Yeah. Well, whether he blows it or not, I mean, I still think he's gonna die, because whether he dies there, in pursuit of Dany, or he dies back with his brother, and it's sort of known that he betrayed him, I think he'll kill him. So
yeah.
There's that. I mean, look what he did to Aaron Greyjoy and stuff. I mean, so he's got the priest tied to the front of his ship and stuff. It's just, that guy's a madman. But
yeah. I mean, and again, this is what Az and I are going to be talking a little bit about there on some of those on Green Dreams and stuff. Is a lot of these big differences. How are we going to get these characters to where they're at in the books. I've brought it up a couple times. John Connington, and Jorah Mormont kind of filling the same role in the show, one in the show and one in the books. And so what does that say? What does that mean that Jorah Mormont's going to be doing if he's not the one going to the Citadel and all that kind of stuff? So
yeah,
certainly some more things that we'll be discussing.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and tell you right now. I know as soon as we flip off here what we'll do in the extended edition, because I just thought it's already in my mind. I actually kind of want to talk about. First, we'll go back and hit some of the Maester Aemon stuff, and I've got this Reddit post about the Citadel, which we can kind of talk about and what's going on there, and then also Sansa and what's happening with Robert Aaron, or Robin. So and look at his what is he? He's trying to get she's possibly going to be married, so she's going to be married off here. So how's that gonna work? They're looking to make that alliance. Littlefinger is anyway, so we can talk about that just a little bit, because she is way off from Winterfell, and I don't see her going to, in this next book, going to aid anybody. I don't know. That would be, so yeah. We'll have to see. We'll turn it off here and we'll figure out how to extend it later on here. But anything else, Sir Matt?
No, I think that's kind of it for this week. Just want to remind people to go check out some of our stuff over there on Patreon. Just came across it here in the notes. We just finished actually that big 4-part mega tourney at Harrenhal series, and I think it's a really, really solid series over there on Patreon. Talking about a lot of the ways in which some of those things some of the events of Tourney Harrenhal could happen. But maybe just providing some more context to it in a way that I think makes a little more sense via what we kind of know in the books. And I think actually I'd like to do maybe some more of those where we look at some of these things that have happened and try to just provide some more context to it in a way that makes like a little more sense. Because oftentimes when we're talking about these theories, we're talking about these things that are always, I don't want to say they're not grounded, but I think they always seem just not a little far off, right? Where that's what I really like about this Harrenhal thing, where they take something that we already know and they say, well, like, okay, I think this is a pretty obvious way in which it would happen, but it just goes about it in a slightly different manner, so that it's like, oh, okay, I could kind of see that. I don't really want to spoil any of it because I think it's really good, but maybe they in our Harrenhal series we talk a little bit about maybe the real reason that Rhaegar and Lyanna fell in love. Yep. Maybe it wasn't love at first sight, but love through some unforeseen circumstances. Yeah, for sure. And one more thing before we sign off here, I would love to challenge folks to send us a character, just a single character, who is still alive in the series, and it doesn't have to be a main character or a major character, and let us know maybe what you think is going to happen to that character, and then we'll also give sort of our ideas on where we think that character is going to go moving forward. Just for fun. I think it'd be kind of fun and a little bit of a challenge to the realm as we start this new year to send us a few of those so we can have some of that, in the first couple months here just to extend. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, we want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing Chapter 7, Catelyn 1 of A Clash of Kings. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com. We will see you in a week, and remember that the night is dark and full of terrors.